Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of Fact Sheet live on ETV, live on NISIM 95.9 and also live on Facebook with the handle ETV Ghana. You're welcome to the show. My name is Samuel Ishen. You know, on Fact Sheet, if it's not a fact, we don't discuss them. Tonight we are coming to you from the office of the Honourable Member of Parliament for Buem Constituency, Honourable Kofi Adams. We're here to seek his views on Ghana, how the nation Ghana is faring from its perspective. Issues to do with the economy, issues to do with the security of our nation, issues to do with governance, issues to do with his own constituency and his political parties and matters arising. That would be our focus tonight. And so, I welcome him to the discussion tonight. Honourable, good evening.
Good evening, my brother.
It's been ages since we met like this.
You are right. You know, so many things have gone wrong. Your previous place of work and the massive attack from government in terms of alienating the media space that is perceived to tilt towards the left, therefore resulted in some kind of inactivity for some time. But since you moved to your new place, we've not had the opportunity of this interview. But so let me use this opportunity to congratulate you. I've monitored. You have added something to that platform that maybe wasn't there until your entry. And that is what we expect everybody to do, that you get into a place and you add some fire to it. And I must congratulate you and commend you for what you are doing there. Just keep it up.
Thank you so much, Honourable, for those compliments. I was going to focus attention on Ghana as I was coming in terms of my plans for the conversation. But you started from the media, and so I would want us to take that course for a few minutes before we come to the general picture. You spoke about the media and how you feel that some media houses, for some perception, were being shut down. Now, there are people who raise concerns that the media, as we speak now, is too polarized. Do you share that view?
Well, the truth is that various media platforms believe either they are on the center of the left, or they are far left, or they are center of the right, or they are far right. And many of these media platforms have their founders who are politically active. And so, in some ways, they tend to influence the editorial policy of the media platform. So, they have a certain agenda to either run down an opponent. That is what actually creates the polarization. I don't have a problem if me sitting here as an NDC member establish a media platform and say, my commitment, the editorial policy of my platform is to project only NDC. But when I move it further from projecting the NDC and its ideas to attacking the opponent and running down the opponent, then the polarization occurs. And so people who are arguing from the point of polarization, it is because of some editorial policy, sometimes pushed so much by the founders. Some of these founders even appear on programs to speak to very political, thorny issues. And in a way, it's not helped. But what would have been the effect if the media was not as present as it is today? We do not know. It may have been worse. Maybe people will go underground, plan other things. So for me, the presence of platform for people to be able to air their views and air their concerns, whether true or not true, whether right or wrong, we all have opportunity of a rebuttal or a response or a rejoinder of a sort. I think that I prefer that to a situation where media will be shut off and people cannot get the opportunity to express themselves.
Should Ghana have a conversation about media ownership, considering that you have concerns about political players owning licenses and influencing editorial directions of programming on either TV or radio? Should we have a conversation about media ownership?
Well, I don't think the conversation should be much about ownership. The conversation should be much about the role of the National Media Commission that is expected to create a platform that the media practitioners will be fair to all in terms of their role of informing, entertaining, educating, and what have you that they will be performing. That is where, for me, we should begin to look at them all.
You think that the National Media Commission is underperforming in terms of?
I don't think that they have performed the way that you expect them to do in terms of checking some of the things that they wait sometimes too long to either be called upon. And even where they are called upon, the way and manner they go about their actions, I'm not satisfied. That's my view. But for ownership, I don't think that we should restrict ownership of media license to only non-political actors. But what will happen is that, okay, then in that case, I'll go and get somebody to get it from me, and still there will be that influence. That is why I'm looking at the regulator. So that whoever, whether the person is a political actor or not, the content that they will be putting out will be acceptable.
I remember during the NDC tenure, I think around 2015.
And just to add that, you know, it is not only the political things that polarize us. The religious ones are also even deadlier.
True.
They are religious platforms that are even more deadlier, that introduce all kinds of content. So we must not restrict ourselves to just the politics, because maybe political processes lead to formation of government or so on and so forth. So some attention gets paid there. But the religious ones are really, really dangerous. They are churning out all kinds of things that if we don't check, if we don't regulate, could result in all manner of situations for our country and even beyond.
I remember 2015, 2016 thereabout, there was an attempt at the formulation of a law which sought to control content that is, you know, churned out either on TV or radio. We kicked against this as journalists. Regardless whether it's political or whether it is religious, should Ghana be looking in the direction of content authorization bill or law to streamline what is spewed on our airwaves?
Good intentions, but we must also watch its application, because sometimes for emerging democratic countries in a part of the world, people tend to use such regulatory means to stifle creativity, and even to the extent that block certain issues that, or certain content that will bring out some information that the other side perceived to be exposing or damning to them. So it's good. We can begin to look at the situation where at least the content must go through some ventilation, some checks, possibly before it gets out there, to be sure that it meets standards. Because if we don't do that, that's why if you take religious, people can come out and you see all kinds of doubling of monies, doing this. If you have this and you come, we will do this for you, we will do that for you. Such content, when put out there, will end up creating, if care is not taken, a lazy youth that will feel like, oh, if I want to live a good life, like some other persons that I see, it doesn't mean that you should waste all your time having any hard work. that all you need is to go and see some spiritualist, and then they will do all kinds of things for you, and you will live well and live good. And that explains why young boys as young as 15, 17, and 18 can kill a fellow person just because they wanted to also live those kind of lives that they watch on the media platform. So some level of control, or some, not control, but some level of content regulation, we should look at it. We should look at it. We should look. Of course, it doesn't mean that current affair programs like we are having here would also they will block you from saying, if you say something that is not right. Of course, there are other processes through whoever feel done in can use to get the correct thing put out there. So yes, to some extent, I think we should get back to the discussions of 2015, 2016 and see how it can be done in a way that will not be used to disturb perceived opponents.
That brings me to concerns that people have been raising just a few weeks ago and even now about the seeming reintroduction of criminal libel law through the back door, as in the arrest of 7 journalists in the country a few weeks ago, Kwabena Bobia, Bene, who was incarcerated, and some other folks. Do you share that view, that that's the intent of the powers that be?
Well, whether it is the intent or not, that is what the people in there are feeling.
But do you feel as such?
Well, of course, I also feel same. Otherwise, I will not be telling you what I'm telling you. That's how I feel. That free speech, or speech generally, is becoming a bit more expensive and being criminalized in a way. And you take a case of this activist, Thompson, Asepa, the art director. He put out something. His further checks later showed that his source was wrong, so he apologized. How do you pick such a person and lock him up? Even after he has apologized, he's used the same platform that he used to apologize. Yet, maybe what is left to be done could be any civil action if the person who feels maligned is not satisfied with the correction he put out there. You can adapt that journey. But to invite him and he willingly reporting himself and then being locked up, I don't think that that's the way we should go. You take Kwabena Bobia and says issue. I'm told that he said he aired a video and raised some issues to do with some land. So if he is to aid investigation, how the one who is to aid you with investigation now becomes a perceived criminal to be locked up and be arrested is also quite worrying. So we must do things that will not create the situation where people may think that that is the intent, or that is where we are driving to, that we are reintroducing the criminal libel through the back door.
Let's shift gears to Ghana in general and ask how you feel as a Ghanaian and as a member of parliament almost 2 years on since we gave the mandate to the NPP. Again, how would you describe Ghana today?
Well, the story is clearly out there. We all know that things are not the way we were told. We only had something good in the early days because of clearly decisions, and positive ones for that matter, that were taken earlier before even the victory of the MPP in the 2016 elections. And I keep referencing the Economic Intelligence Unit report in 2016. They made it very clear. Their prediction was that the MPP was winning the elections. But they also gave indication that the economy in 2017 and 2018 will see a lot of positive growth, not because of the initiation of any of the parties that will win. that whether it was NDC that will win 2016 or MPP, CPP or PNC, 2017 and 2018 was going to see some progressive growth. And they stated it clearly and related that to the actions and policies of the John Mahama administration from 2014 through 2015 into 2016, that will give us those results. So no wonder after the first 100 days in office of the then MPP administration in 2017, the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, was out there crediting himself and his team for being able to strengthen the cedi against the dollar, to the extent that he even declared that they have arrested the dollar, locked it, and handed the key over to not some low-rank police officer, but the IGP himself. In other words, he is giving us indication that they have taken major decisions to secure the cedi against the shocks, and that we will not see any depreciation whatsoever. What are we seeing today? The cedi is wobbling, is struggling, 5 years on. So if the Vice President wanted his economic team to be credited for the strength of the cedi in the first 100 days, when they really have not done anything, whether it is industry that you want to improve, whether it is agri sector, whether it's tourism, in your first 100 days, you have done basically nothing. So you should have credited that to the exiting government, even as institutions like Economic Intelligence Unit have done long before you even won your election. But he took that credit and credited the economic management team he chairs. 5 years on, having been in charge for more than 5 years. Now look at where the economy is. If 100 days, you were able to do that, now you have longer time. So we should have seen more.
But is that not where they make the argument, per your position? 2017, in terms of the macroeconomic indicators, we were doing well. 2018, we were still doing well with our macroeconomic indicators until COVID-19 struck.
No, but by 2019, we have started going down.
What indicators made you feel?
The number of indicators, even the growth rates and what have you, were all down. We have borrowed so much. We were over borrowing, and the warning signs were clear that we were borrowing beyond our capacity and that we needed to leave some room. Don't forget that the previous administration, headed by John Dramani Mahama and late Pa Kwesi and Mr. Arthur, have run the country and run an economy that have given huge space. Debt to GDP was as low as 53 to 56%. So there was so much space. And instead of keeping that space so that people can have confidence in your economy, they have borrowed and borrowed and borrowed, that today we have gone beyond 83% debt to GDP, which is serious. So when you get out there, don't forget that you have also become a middle income country, whether low or whatever level. So you no longer will have certain facilities that are available to you when you are below the middle income country status. So you have to go to the open market to look for money. You go to the bond market to look for resources to come and develop your country. So if the people analyze and realize that, no, you have borrowed so much that all your revenues and everything put together, your debt to GDP is about 83%. They will be careful in terms of giving you. If they will give you, you will get it at a higher interest rates. So sometimes, even before a project commences, you have already lost right from the word go. And that is what this government have done. They have just borrowed and borrowed and borrowed. My brother, I think about 3 days ago, a colleague of ours, the majority chief whip, Honorable Ano Dompre, made a statement on the floor of the House in relation to the Ghana Gas Company and how is doing so well, and how Ghanaians are running it, and how it has helped stabilize the energy supply, and how now 50% of domestic gas consumption is coming from that company. What he forgot was that until the NDC came to power, Ghana Gas didn't exist. That was a creation of the NDC. Late President Mills and Vice President John Dramani Mahama, and he continued as president and commissioned it in 2014. So that single entity that was being celebrated through that statement was a creation of the NDC. And today, it has been a savior in terms of the energy space. And you can imagine the number of jobs, the revenue that it is bringing, the stability that it has given in the energy supply system. And that we chose as a government, as a policy, not to flare gas, as was being done before the NDC came into power, and to process this to be utilized for other purposes. Can you imagine if this government have also done something in that area? Or in any other area? The 1D1F.
Yes, they boast of industrialization.
It ends at sloganeering. You go and pick up an old existing company and then give them some tax incentive and force them to put 1D1F signage on their factory. Many of these companies they have described, or industries they have described as 1D1F, have existed long before even they came to power. These were PNDC times companies. Some existed even before PNDC.
Was that they were going to do this in collaboration with the private sector?
No, they didn't say so. They said one district, one factory.
Yes.
That it means that you were going to have a policy that targets every district, that every district will have a factory. Some of us even argue that why should you talk about one district, one factory? That would be discriminatory. But that was their policy. They didn't say it was going to be determined by the private person. If it was going to be determined by a private person, why were you saying one district, one factory? Why didn't you say that you are going to industrialize districts and just leave it at that? But you had a policy. 1D, 1F. One district, one factory. And you didn't promise us that.
What is the problem if government decides that even after making the promise that one district, one factory, they feel that they can go into partnership with private businessmen?
Well,
After all, there are BOT agreements.
So government should not come and be taking credit for what it did not do, that the private person have done, and then you go taking credit. Your own promise that you made, you have deviated from it. But you have not come back. They still want us to celebrate them in the name of 1D1F. Because in my district, more than 5 years now, there's no factory. The next district, more than 5 years now, there's no factory. Indeed, if you go to the entire OT region of now 9 districts, it's only one area that some private person has put something in relation to cassava and yam process. That's all. So the government cannot be pretending to be telling us that they have succeeded in their one district, one factory package that they told us prior to 2016 elections, when that tenure has ended and we have gotten into another tenure and still we cannot see anything. All we continue to see is coming to repaint factories that have existed in the name of tax waivers and then forcing them to put 1D1F signage there. So it's just they haven't done much in that area.
Well, for my guests who come on the fact sheet, they always know that when you join me, it's about the fact. Earlier, you're making the point about the fact that, growth had declined even around 2019 before COVID-19 set in. I was just checking. By 2018, growth was around 6.2%.
Yeah.
By 2019, it was around 6.5%. It had grown. Yeah. The decline rather that happened...
There are sectors. When you pick sector by sector, you would observe that there have been a lot of decline. If you want to go into details, we will see sector by sector decline. Some sectors did so well because, for example, if you introduce free education, your expenditure in terms of allocation of resources to that sector will be more. And so in terms of measurement, you will see education growing. If you say you are doing planting for food and jobs, and therefore you are increasing investment in terms of fertilizer supply and the rest, you may observe that in terms of your investment in the area of agriculture, it is what? Shooting up. But the reality is that most of these figures that you use to do your calculation, when you go on the ground, it's not happening. For example, we just looked at the 2018 Auditor General's report. In the area of just fertilizer for 2 districts that the Auditor General looked at in terms of planting for food and job fertilizer, over 2,780 bags of fertilizer could not be accounted for. It went elsewhere other than being used by the farmers within these 2 districts. It was smuggled out. But you will sit in Accra and you do your calculation as if that 2,780 bags of fertilizer went into some productivity in those 2 districts. Can you imagine if you should extrapolate this to many other areas? So that's what I'm saying. Yes, you may sit in Accra, look at the figures, and talk about what you want to talk about. But when you go on the ground, the reality is different. And we do sometimes the reality analysis because that is what confronts us.
It's interesting. I'm hoping the next NDC government would come to power and we would hear that we are having a conversation where it's not limited to the macroeconomic indicators, but rather it's to the micro. Because that's been the norm all the time where we are told from budgetary allocations and co, and then figures are thrown at us, inflation, macroeconomic this and that, and that's all we're supposed to be happy about.
You see, that is how it must be. It must all be about the micro, not about when the macro is doing well, and truly so, it should reflect in the micro. It should reflect in the pricing. It should reflect in the pricing. Look, Dr. Buem's theory that when the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. It's a reality. What he said is true, and that is what is happening now. So you can throw all kinds of macroeconomic indicators out there, but the reality will expose you. The fuel price will expose you. The CD will expose you. Because you can't continue to propagate and talk about, oh, you have not negotiated this is not your figure and so on. And now you will be doubting virtually every institution. Every credible institution that comes out with something, you challenge them. Unless they praise you. Which government who is this? Institutions that you quoted in the past and used to celebrate, when today they tell you that things are bad, you say they are wrong. Now all of a sudden they have become NDC. Now the way to become a member of NDC is to raise concerns about this government. So I've heard some persons even 2 days ago saying that respected Kwame Pienim is shifting to becoming an NDC member just because he criticized his own government. Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, because he raised issues, he says, so the way to becoming NDC is just raise an issue that the government is not happy about. It means you have taken an NDC membership.
Well, if you just join us, you're live on ETV. This is Fact Sheet. We're having a conversation with the Honorable Kofi Adams, Member of Parliament for the Buem Constituency, and we're taking a short breather. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. There's a lot more areas to cover before the show comes to an end. Do stay with us. And welcome back to Fact Sheet Live on ETV. I've seen several comments that are coming through. I'll take the time to go through some of these. It's also live on NISIM 95.9 and 100.1. I encourage you to share the link if you are watching the show tonight. So I'm here with the Honorable Kofi Adams, and we've been speaking about journalism, media, we've been speaking about governance. But we can't move away from governance without touching on the mantra today in Ghana. Coup d'etat, coup d'etat, coup d'etat. Should we be concerned?
Well, we must all be concerned because not only is coup d'etat a strange word or action in Ghana, it has happened in this country a number of times. It has also happened in many parts of our part of the world, and so we must be concerned. We can only be fools to pretend that because we have consistently had elections and change of government from one party to another, to the point that even a sitting president lost an election and handed over peacefully, So we go to sleep and not be concerned about other things that are happening around us. Then we'll be fools. It's like saying that, oh, because maybe for some time you haven't heard of a robbery in a particular area. So you can now decide that just go to sleep, don't lock your gates anymore, don't close your doors, and that God alone will protect you. God has protected. No, you have to be concerned, especially when you see signs that give semblance to what has happened in some parts of the world that have resulted in such occurrences. We need to. That is why governments will invest in security. And when we talk about security, security is not just about buying of guns, buying of armored vehicles, and all those kind of things. It's also about human security. It's also about human security. Let the human being feel free. Let the human being feel that he's not going through painful processes just to be able to exist, just to be able to make ends meet. This is also part of the things that we have to do. So for me, persons who are speaking to it, creating platform and advising should be hailed rather than being made to look like who wants to plan a coup and will come and stand and be giving lectures. Who will do that?
But no. Do you see those signs, especially as you've worked with the former President George Rawlings before? Do you see those signs?
Well, if you looked at the things that we see around and things that have happened in many other countries, take Burkina, take Mali, take Guinea, take even some around us here, situations that have happened there. You cannot pretend that for you, you are insulated.
What are these pointers for you? What are these pointers?
When you see a situation where somebody goes to school and spend 4 years or so to run a program or do a course, and after national service is staying at home, moving from office to office, non-existing factory to factories, looking for a job, and spending more than 4 years that you spend in training and still struggling and not getting any job, and having to depend on your parents again, who thought they were squeezing money to get you through education so you can come and now take them through some comfort. Such persons sometimes become willing hands.
But unemployment is not an uncommon situation.
Become willing. I'm talking about things that allows for that to happen. So when we are having a conversation around it, it is better than not having a conversation around it. Because it is when we have a conversation around it that we can all come to the conclusion that the solution is not a coup d'etat. But when you pretend like, let us not talk about the things that leads to that, and just keep quiet. Well, you may keep quiet. I may keep quiet. He may not. So he goes around and pick these willing hands and say, look, let's start something. And if we succeed, your situation will change.
But how about the counter-arguments that the more we talk about it, the more we plant the idea into the minds of people who otherwise would not have thought about it because they feel that the people are for it?
No, the coup is not a new thing. It's happening around us. So whether we are talking about, you think that people didn't read about Guinea, people didn't read about Mali, they didn't see. Are they not watching on our, so this time you go to social media, you type something, and you get every information that you want. So they are already very much aware. But what is not being discussed extensively is that that is not the solution. And that they may come and make some of the very beautiful statements, but at the end of the day, they still have to go through a certain process to be able to achieve what they are talking about. And so, when you initiate conversation, then you can carry those who may be going through the pain, who will become the willing hands that will hail such things when they happen. That is not the solution. So it is not going about arresting people who discuss it. that will serve as a solution. But it is rather all of us teaming up to say that democracy in its ineffective form is better than maybe a dictatorship or a military regime. And for me, one of the things, especially for those of us who belong to the NDC stock and have our founder indicate clearly that the revolution of 31st December 1981 will be and must be the last of its kind. And post that, we have had consistent democratic processes of electing our leadership. This year, we turn 30 years of practicing continuous democracy that have seen change of government, including even he himself. You know, at the age of 52, he went by the constitutional provision and said, the constitution that we approved in 1992 says I can do only 2 terms of 4 years each. I have done so. Whether I am young, still strong at 52 or not, whether we have tried it before or not, I am going. Somebody else is taking over. His party lost an election, he went through the processes and handed over at 52. You can imagine what is happening around us. People who are far older, some can't even walk, some are aided by age to walk. They continue to amend the constitution to go on and on and on. So they are also having their own form of coups that they are doing in their own country. But I can say that we have had a certain trajectory that our founding father of the 4th Republic, His Excellency Jerry John Rawlings, have given to us. That even he, at 52, prime age, that is when many are struggling to become presidents now. He was exiting. And then President Kofi comes, he does his 2 terms, also leave. President Mills comes, unfortunately we lost him along the line. The vice took over. Democratically, nothing happened. That vice contests the elections later as a substantive candidate, wins, goes into an election again, and he lost that election as a sitting president. He handed over. We thought that our democracy must be growing. Our institutions that helps us do this must grow. But you and I must be seen to also be engaging and talking so that we will not slack. When we keep quiet and go to sleep and think that, oh, only some institutions should do it, and that, oh, we have a judiciary, they must be fair and just. Oh, we have the police that will be fair to everybody, that will investigate matters and do justice to issues. Oh, we have an executive that will care about us. We have parliament that is also there to pass good laws and what have you. If you go to bed, in our democratic dispensation, you would wake up and you will find something else. So we must continue to talk.
There's a school of thought that says that it is when politicians fail that the citizenry look to the army. Have you, the politicians, are you failing us for this whole mantra of coup d'etats to be surfacing?
Well, that is why I am suggesting that we need to even be talking about it, so that nobody will see that as an alternative.
But our politicians failing us for us to be now suddenly something.
Well, it's quite clear out there that we have, in one way or the other, not lived up to the expectations of the people who queue to vote. They have some expectations as they queue based on what we promised them or what we told them. Because if I'm told that yetisikaso nanso ekomodie, if I'm told that I have worked in Bank of Ghana before and that I know the money is here, we don't have to go and borrow, and I believe that and give you the mandate, and you now come and you are even celebrating for going to borrow. You organize a party because you have successfully borrowed. Then the people who gathered together to give you that mandate based on some of these conversation that you had with them will start doubting whether you really meant what you were saying or you were just deceiving them. So as politicians, we must be careful some of the things that we say. Our counterpart in the religious practice sometimes are lucky because whatever it is that they say, they will still tell you that oh, it is God. So if it doesn't happen, they put the blame on God. But you, the politician, you don't have anybody to go and blame. You don't have anybody to go and blame. That is why you must be careful also what it is that you say.
You were talking about, historical antecedents and how there's been civilian handing over from one government to the other. So I ask, the NPP has been saying they are breaking the eight, they are breaking the eight, they are breaking the eight. Now, do you, from the accounts you've given, do you think if the next elections, the NDC were to win the elections, do you think there's going to be that peaceful transition happening?
Well, as for the eight that they say they will break, they have already broken the eight. Now, if you go to the pump station to buy fuel, it is way. No, I'm saying that. I'm saying transitions. Yes, I know. I'll come to transition. I'm saying as for break the eight, they have already broken the eight already. So there's no eight to be broken again because the eight has been broken. The eight has been broken already, and it is out there already for you. I'm praying that the CD doesn't also challenge fuel to break. To break it. That's what I'm praying very hard that it doesn't challenge the fuel to break it. But clearly, look, when the people of this country decides, and when NDC wins come 2024, our candidate will be sworn in as president. Before the parliament of the country, that's the 9th parliament, our candidate will be sworn in. Nobody will be able to stop that process from happening. So as for break eight, I leave it at talk level. They should focus on governance. You see, when your mindset and everything is all about winning elections, you end up not doing what is right. Because for everything you do, your thinking is, oh, I want to win the next election. Oh, I want to win elections. But some of the things that you have to do for people to feel okay may result in certain actions. Even it will include having to even change offices. But you have an executive president who is even unable to do a reshuffle. He's unable to do it because he feels like, hey, if I touch this person, maybe it will shake. Yeah, it would. No.
Could it also be he knows his people are delivering in those positions? That's why he's not touching them.
Delivery? Are you feeling the delivery? Otherwise, will you be breaking it in the fuel sector and then the CD is wobbling?
Well, that point you just made brings me to a certain conception out there that the NDC is only seeking to frustrate the Akufo-Addo government in terms of its ability to deliver, with their insistence that the e-levy must not be passed, seeing that the government has stated this is for infrastructure, this is for the empowerment of the youth who want to go into entrepreneurship, this is for the road sector. And so you are the ones undermining the capacity of the government to deliver.
Samuel, I'll take you back to 2021. One of the MPP activists, Paul Adomochri.
Oh, but why would you describe Paul Adomochri as an MPP activist?
He is an activist.
Why? Why do you describe him as?
He's clear.
No, but why do you describe him as?
I'm saying he's clear out there. Why don't I have a right to this? He's my good friend, but he knows that he's an activist.
Okay.
Came out and did some analysis in 2021 when His Excellency the President started nominating his appointees to appear before the appointments committee, he indicated clearly that the NDC had the numbers on that committee to reject the nominees. What came out of that process? Most of the nominees came through consensus from that committee. But apart from few that, maybe about 4 or so that we voted on, virtually all appointees were passed, just by mere voice votes, even at the plenary, because the committee had agreed by consensus. So if we wanted to frustrate the government of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, then we would not have aided him to even form the government. That was even the time we were in court, challenging the outcome of the elections, but we're still confirming his nominees to go through to be able to form government. We passed his 2021 budget. At the time, it was fresh in our minds about what happened during the 2020 polls. The 2022 budget was not the entirety, the policy areas, we passed it. But we're looking at some aspects and some revenue generation models that we thought, no, it's wrong. And not only is NDC speaking, even MPP members, key MPP members are speaking against that policy.
A lot, but I don't hear anybody say, Kofi Mensah, Yaw Edu.
Recently, the former chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament, Esibe, granted interview, because you asked me, I'll mention to City FM, and made it very clear that this whole idea about thinking that e-levy is the solution, it's not the solution to.
But he hasn't got any locus in Parliament.
Well, you don't need to be in Parliament to be able to speak. There are people who understand the economy out there than even those of us in Parliament here. We are only representing the people, so they may be sending us. Sometimes when you are sent, it doesn't mean that you are the most intelligent person in the house. Maybe they may gather together and decide that it is you they are sending. So they know that you can appropriately pick the information they have put together and deliver it. You may be a good spokesperson, but know that you have the best of understanding to break things down. So I am telling you about someone who led the Finance Committee in the 7th Parliament for whatever success they thought that they chose. He was talking. I've heard Kwame P in him. I've heard, and this is a celebrated, I'm mentioning those who have economics background. I'm not talking about those who are just speaking without the accepted financial and economic background to be able to analyze that situation, even before I come to the NDC. They have spoken against it. That is not the way to go. And you too know that that's not the way to go. I agree that there may be some persons who are enjoying the digital space and using it to do business without paying appropriate taxes. But that does not mean that bring a policy that now punishes people who are already even paying. For example, if you go to a shop like maybe Game Shop or ShopRite, or even most of our fuel stations, even most of our small stores, they have introduced a mechanism system that when you pay even with a card or you pay through Momo, they print a receipt for you. That receipt has on it VAT, all kinds of taxes on it. But they are telling you that if the two of us walk into a ShopRite and we bought things for, say, 300 Ghana cedi, and I take cash from my pocket to pay, that is all. Apart from the VAT, NHR, and the rest that is on it that I have paid, which is part of the 300. But you, if you decide to pay using Momo, you are charged another 1.75% or 1.5%. Does it make sense? In the argument that some people are enjoying digital space and they are not paying tax, you who go to that ShopRite shop or many of the pharmacy shops and the rest who already have introduced that those charges, VAT is on it, and all those things are on it, and they pay to GRA regularly. Does it make sense to introduce such a tax policy? We said government, together with its agencies, must wake up. And in digital space, it's very easy to identify and know those who are doing business and not reporting to GRA. Get them, and either you block them off the space or get them to pay the appropriate taxes. Then we can move on. But to introduce this e-levy in the manner that you are doing is wrong. So that is not sabotaging government.
But
We know that
is sinking now.
we don't know. The ship cannot be sinking.
The finance minister has indicated we don't have any money.
We don't, and e-levy. So all the finance minister said he's going to raise revenue of about 147 billion for 2022. How much did he say e-levy is bringing? Is it not less than 7 billion? So the 7 billion is what is going to raise the 147 or so billion. If you don't get the e-levy, it means you can't raise revenue again. Why? The oil that we have, are we not going to? Now the oil prices have even shot up. So you are going to even get more revenue from oil that otherwise would not be there. So what is he talking about?
Well, if you just join us, you're welcome to Fact Sheet Live on ETV. We're taking a short breather. We will continue the conversation. And you're welcome back from that short break. Unfortunately, if you check the time, you realize our time is far exhausted. But there is going to be a part 2 of this conversation, God willing, next week. And it's going to focus on other areas to do with the political parties themselves. The NDC has been crying about how their members are being persecuted. We also will touch on issues to do with the various strikes that have happened in the country. UTAC, at the moment, still, we don't know whether really the 2 weeks would suffice in terms of their ability to resolve their issues with government amicably. There are other concerns as well that we'll touch on in our second edition of this conversation. Do stay with us. Good night.